Hey y'all, welcome back to my videos. I don't know. Why are you even here? Anyways, so we are now looking at game number 2 of tournament number 13. So I'm playing with the black pieces. Let's jump into it. Here we see e4, c6, knight to c3, d5, knight f3, and d takes e4. So I actually haven't seen this before when I had been playing tournaments. We see knight takes e4, and well, I just hope we transpose into something else. Now, this does look a little familiar to something else. What does it look familiar to? I play bishop to f5, and why would I play that here? Let's just say this isn't a good move. Instead, what I should do is, if they were to play d4 here, d5, and knight c3, now bishop to f5 is fine. But what's the difference between a knight being on f3 and a pawn being on d4? Well, let's find out. The difference is actually quite significant. D takes, bishop f5, knight g3, and bishop to g6. Well, now they just have another piece developed, and they can start going after this bishop, which is actually very hard to defend. Not just defend, but more so it's very hard to prevent them getting more attacks against it. So they start with easily the strongest move here, h4. First off, I should mention bishop g4 is probably almost forced, unless you want to bring it back to c8, because this line is so bad for black. Bishop g6, h4. And if h6, the problem is, well, they don't even have to go h5. They could go like knight e5, and I still have to retreat here. And this is just very, very scary because, well, look how active their pieces are. And there's not really a way to exploit this either. They're just playing essentially what looks like a main line with a bunch of tempos up. This looks almost lost at this point. So I didn't play h6. I instead opted for something dubious. This was intentionally dubious. I knew that this move was probably very bad, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure my chances were still alive by playing something a little bit different. And I believe I heard the term rocking the boat before, and this is definitely what that is. I played the move f6. Ben Feingold, please don't hurt me. I know. So I played f6 because I realized that I already had made an opening mistake, which is something that I wasn't happy about, definitely. But after f6, now I can retreat my bishop to f7 at the very least, and maybe I can just hold on and cry a little bit. So they played bishop c4, which makes a lot of sense. I played knight to h6 here, with the idea of bishop to f7 or knight to f7, trying to go for some e5, something like this. I just needed to develop my pieces, and this is the only way I could find out how. They played h5, bishop f7 now. Now I don't have to take with my king. That's also really important to me. Bishop takes on f7 here. Knight takes f7. Yay, didn't have to take with my king, but this position's so unbelievably ugly, I'm practically lost already. D4 and knight to d7 here. They played queen to e2, and I played queen c7, and now my idea is I want to castle long as fast as possible, because if I don't, then if I go kingside, wow, that pawn on h5, they're going to play some sort of h6 maybe in the future. E6, the square is weak, everything's weak, honestly, so gotta watch out for that. They played knight f5 instead, and I was so tilted from my horrible opening that I didn't see a very basic move here. What should black play? So, the move black should play here is queen a5 check, which just picks up the knight, and it's game over already. But no, I castled long, which was very silly. And after h6, yes, that's right, I had queen a5 check again, and I missed it again. They took, and I realized here when I was like recalling the position that I had it. That put me on tilt, honestly, for the rest of the game. But you know, that's not an excuse for how I've been playing so far, because I wasn't on tilt at the start, but I still somehow played really badly. Here, after knight takes, I decided to trade off twice and just say, okay, now I got to at least trade off some of my worst pieces here, which I think is fair. I ended up playing queen a5 check now, which I don't think is as useful, unfortunately. But after c3, I played e5, and the idea of e5 is that now I'm trying to open the position when they aren't castled, because, well, if they were to castle here, I would say queen takes a2 is something we're pretty happy to see, because now whose king is actually worse now. Instead, they played rook h5, which is a very, very cool move. And the point of it here is, well, what they're trying to do is prevent me from taking on d4, because originally that's what I wanted to do. Let's just say if they make a silly move like this, now we can take on d4, and they can't actually really take back, because let's just say they take back with the knight. Now we have moves like, well, we have rook e8, and after knight to e6, I think we can get away with this one right here. Queen to d5, and this piece should be falling, because, well, you know, otherwise you just lose the queen immediately, because there's a pin here. So that's just something to point out. But instead, e5 rook h5 was actually a really interesting and creative way to solve the problem. I played rook d to e8 to hopefully have the future threat of taking. Right now it's not a threat. Right now, they, like, let's just say they play a3, which they did in the game. Taking isn't really possible, because after takes on a5, takes on e2, king takes e2. If we do our counting, we can see that white is a full rook up, unfortunately. So that doesn't work out. After a3, this does kind of give away an edge. Funnily enough, when I checked this with the engine, it was giving the idea of king to f1. And the idea is essentially, well, queen d5 was top move, d takes, f takes. The whole idea here is the resulting position, even though the king looks a little awkward, there's not really an easy attack against white's king, and this pawn is quite weak. So white's just going to be playing against that pawn, and if they win it, the game's almost over, just because, well, it's just opposite side castling where white's a pawn up for essentially nothing in this position, because their rook's excellently placed. So this is not something I was too excited to see if it were to happen in the game. Instead, they played a3, which for some reason gives the chances back after queen to d5. Now things are supposedly okay here. But I played rook h to g8, trying to attack the g2 pawn here, and they end up castling. So it's interesting because I didn't take on g2, and I think the big reason why is because I was worried of some sort of take on e5 followed by rook takes h7, where they get a lot of initiative on the 7th rank here. I end up playing queen to d5 instead, and the idea here was that if they take on e5, which is something I was happy to see, now I have queen f7. And the idea of queen f7 is just to attack the knight and then recapture afterwards, because I wanted to recapture with the piece here. So they play rook h4, knight takes e5, knight takes, and now rook takes. And now I'm all of a sudden getting some activity here, which is for the first time practically in the entire game. We see queen to f3, h5, rook d to h4 here, or rook h to d4, my apologies, rook to e8, and now queen h3 check. So what I was hoping for here is, of course, rook d7. I would happily play into a position like this, just because creating imbalances in a position where it still feels like I'm worse is not really a bad idea, or not really a bad idea. So they play queen h3 check instead. And I play rook 8 to e6. Why did I play this move? First off, we have to recognize if I play king to b8, rook d7 is going to hurt a lot more, because, well, I can't actually take and go into the 2 rooks versus queen. And of course, if, well, king c7, I just lose my queen here, because after queen takes, rook takes, well, it's protected by the queen. So that didn't happen. Rook 8 to d6, and of course not rook 5 to e6, because now they can start piling up like this, and that could be annoying. Luckily, I think I do have the move f5, which should save things, but that's not something we really want to look forward to. After rook 8 e6, this also does allow rook 8 to, or rook d4 to d8 check, king c7, and then check again. But again, any instances of this, I think I was actually quite happy to go into, so I wasn't worried. So f4 was played, rook to e2, again getting a little bit of activity, which is really nice to see. Queen f5, and I think this move was quite important, because it's hard to find a different move anyways, but let's just say king b1. Now maybe I can play f5, and well, the pin is gone, and I think that's actually really important here. Because, well, something that they might want to do is play something like rook to d6 in the future. And they can't really play rook to d6 as well, or have it be as effective, without having the move queen f5, or preventing us from playing f5 about that pin, right? So like, let's just say rook d6 now. Now we can play f5, and we kind of defend against that pin there. Rook takes, we can just play rook takes. Everything's defended, and I think we're okay. So queen f5 instead. Queen to c7 here. And my idea is, well, I might actually have some aggression in mind. We'll see. So g3, queen b6. Simple, right? Sorry, not queen b3. Queen b2. Just simple, right? Queen c7, just bring it over to the queen side, or I guess technically the king side, because the kings are over there. Going for an attack. And yeah, the initiative kind of was playing itself at this point right now, which is really nice to see. Rook 4d2 and queen e3. This is actually really important. So it's important not to blunder. Rook takes d2. That would be quite embarrassing, actually, because queen takes e6 is check, and then they can recapture. We're down a rook. We're going to lose the game. So instead, queen e3 maintains all the threats and puts them in a counter pin. There's been a lot of pins and a lot of king play this entire game, and unfortunately it doesn't end here. It just keeps going. So king c2, now queen e4 check, and I was really just so happy just to get the queens off, because if the queens were just going to stay on, then it feels like my king's almost weaker, because, well, they have the d file and I have the e file. The d file is closer to the kings. The e file is a little further away. But all right, anyways, queen takes e4. Rook 6 takes on e4, just again asking if they want to trade a pair of rooks. I was really happy about that if they would, and they did. And now it turned from me trying to defend the entire game to me actually considering, should I play for more here? So rook to d2 was played, and I played rook e3. So I didn't want to trade because I believe this endgame doesn't really bring any hope. We'll just go through why. Just keep going up, and then king to e4 here. And really, there's just no way to make progress. If we play f5 check, well, there's no way to get over there. And they can just keep putting pawns in the center here. And what we might notice with these two pawns here is, even if I get c5 check in and they go back, there's actually just no way to enter into their position as long as they just cover me getting in like this, which is very easy to do after a move like b3. So yeah, there's just no chance for anything here. Very easy to make a draw. So that's why I kept rooks on, because I am higher rated here, and now I went from completely lost to equal. So I want to press on, and I want to see if I can use that for like a psychological edge. Rook to g2, king to d7. Time to bring the king in here, since the rook is defending that pawn. Instead, I think maybe a move like rook to h2 is better, because after rook takes g3, rook takes h5. Well, this is a lot less simple here, because it looks like they're winning our pawn here. We might actually have to end up playing a move like rook to g6, or something of similar, something similar here. Because, well, they're threatening rook f5, defending their pawn and attacking our f-pawn. And we don't want to play king d7, because these checks will hurt, where either we have to go back, which is really depressing, or if we don't go back, we go up, we start losing a lot of pawns. So both cases are not good. But rook g2 is passive, and again, in rook endgames, it's very common. You want to play actively. Even if you're defending, go for active defense by counterplay. So king d7, king d2, rook to e7, rook to h2, rook to g7, saying, hey, now that I'm actually on the on d7 now, I'm trying to argue that maybe it's a little bit better. I don't know if that's actually the case. They played rook h3 instead. I think rook takes h5 is still best. Or after rook takes g3, rook h7. Do I want to play king c8 or king e6? I'm not really sure, but that's not something that happened in the game anyways. They played rook h3. Now king e6, and the difference is now rook h7 doesn't come with check, and this is heavily in our favor, actually. So they played king e3 and I played king f7. Now, the problem is I'd love to play king f5, but losing the pawn with check is not really the most advisable idea. So instead, king f7 with the idea of king to g6, defending everything, and then just bringing the king or the rook over, maybe even to the queen side, but start probing in the center and just see what I can get out of it. But king f7, b4, king g6, king d4, rook d7 check, just to see where the king is going. They went king c5, rook d5 check, king c4, and I saw a really interesting idea here. And the idea is actually really annoying to play against because I'm just trying to get activity. The idea is a5. Why is this such an interesting move? It's an interesting move because it sets a trap. The trap may be harder to immediately see, but it has to do with the fact that this king is actually almost checkmated. If we could just cover this square and give them a check, it's checkmate. So a5 is designed to try to weaken their pawn structure. Pawn takes is probably the best continuation, maybe even something like king b3, but do you really want to get less active in a rook endgame? Maybe not. So instead they played rook h1, which misses my threat of a4, and unfortunately after a4 here, what we can see is that b5 will be checkmate. So they have no choice other than to just sacrifice a pawn with b5 here. But after b5 and rook takes b5, now we're up a pawn, and this is completely different, where it actually feels like it's close to, if not already, winning now, which is a big deal because it was just a small trap that essentially won at the very least a pawn and still got us a lot more activity because of it. So here, after missing a4, they didn't play b5, they played f5 check. I played king g5. There's no reason to take. If I take here, then rook takes h5, king g4 takes. And why would I allow this, right? Because now maybe they start pushing and maybe they can catch up. So if I take here, king e6, they don't actually go after the pawn yet. b5 is best chance for black now at this point. King takes. And unfortunately, yeah, white's just winning still because we're just slower, as we can see here. If we just keep going, bam, bam. And it doesn't even matter if they get here, because if we go here, push, oh sorry, king takes a3, b5, we have to step in the way of the check if we just keep watching here. Boom, 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 which is very important. And our king is their king is very close to stopping us. But very long variation, but again, not really a point in allowing that anyways. So after king g5, they played rook e1 and allowed checkmate. So after checkmate, well, the game's over. So this is my first time checkmating in a little bit too, which is interesting. But no, that's not true. Last game I did checkmate, so my bad, I misspoke. But that was the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Going back, I think the most important thing for us to learn from this is that when you see something slightly different from a main line, for example, here, this is still main line, by the way. So this is inexcusable for me, but I'm just trying to create a lesson from it. If you see something different from a position that you normally see, for example, the knight being here instead of the pawn being on d4 here, ask yourself what the difference is and why that's important. And well, that will lead you to see that maybe not going into this would be a good idea. Instead, just playing a move like knight to f6 or knight to d7 to prepare knight to f6. It's just a much smarter idea here. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you, well, with the next game, game 3. Have a good one. Bye-bye.